So helping senior professionals to understand how to position themselves, and more importantly, also for them to understand how boards actually evaluate new board members and actually evaluate candidates who are applying to board roles. That is what is important. Now, something that I consistently see is that even highly qualified board members, highly qualified professionals are struggling to make that shift, and therefore they don't have that insight to make that shift, and then they don't get the board roles. So if you have been looking for a board role for a while, you've been submitting application after application, and you haven't achieved any success, it's not because you are not experienced enough. It's simply because there needs to be a shift. There needs to be a reframing of how you present yourself to boards, and then you will see how that changes and you start achieving success in your board search specifically. Now, it's all about how the experience that you have is being interpreted by boards. If your experience is interpreted in the right way, then you will achieve a higher rate of success. It's slightly different, and a slightly different perspective to what people normally have, and to what I've seen people share over and over again. And what I want to do is that I want to show you why, even though you are a strong candidate for many boards, why it sometimes happens that you do not get that appointment. And I want to keep it practical. I want to keep it focused. So therefore, I'm going to allow that questions come at the end. Even if you ask a question now, Janice's not going to interrupt me, so that the session just flows, and in case someone needs to drop out early, that it isn't a problem. So it's going to be practical. I'm going to give as much practical advice as possible, but please let's keep the questions to the end. And then those who are interested and want to ask a question and listen to the answers are more than welcome to remain online, and I'll stay online as long as need be. Just please, I want to go to bed by, say, 9 o'clock tonight. But until then, I'm available. Now, at the end, I'm going to share more steps about how you can reframe this. So we're going to look at the problem, and then we'll look at solutions and ways in which you can reframe it. But at the end, I'm going to share some steps about how we can help you to actually make this change and how you can explore this more deeply. Now, let me just see if this thing works. No, I have to do it manually. Those of you who are on here, many of you know me already, and some of you, I think, have heard about me. Some of you don't know me at all. Now, my name is Elmarie Porthouse, and yes, I am the only Elmarie Porthouse in this world. If you see the name Elmarie Porthouse and you go and have a look, and please, it's Porthouse, not Porterhouse. I'm not a steak. I am, in Afrikaans, we would translate it to a havenhuisie, which is a house on the harbor. So, Elmarie, very Afrikaans name, Porthouse. I'm married to an Australian, so it's an Australian, and I think it's an English surname as well. There are some Porthouses in the UK, but that combination of Afrikaans name and Aussie surname has caused me to be the only Elmarie Porthouse. So if you Google me, then it's me. It's my profile that will come up. I am the founder of NED Careers, and I've worked in this space since 2013. In 2013, I was in Australia, and with the visa processes and all of those things, I wasn't able to work in a company. So I started writing online, and in that way, I came across some companies that work in the governance space. And suddenly all of my expertise, all of my experience that I've had as a teacher and in the banking and insurance industry, even in the hotel industry, all of that came together. And I realized that, but this sparks a fire in me that just can't be put out. So in 2013, I pivoted. I started to work solely with board members and in the board search space and looking at how do people get appointed. First, I looked at, okay, once they are in the boardroom, what do they do? That was okay. It was nice to get that know-how. But I saw that the one thing that people really struggle with was to get into the boardroom. They do all of this work, they gather this experience, they do all kinds of governance qualifications, they gain all those qualifications, and then they get stuck. Then they sit with all these qualifications, they sit with all this experience, and they start submitting application after application for board roles. And I've had people tell me that they've done countless applications. One guy told me he stopped counting when he got to around 100. He does not even know how many applications he submitted, but he was never successful. And when you look at his profile, he should have been successful. So it was simply a case of how he positioned himself. And that is what we do. So not just myself, Shani as well, and the rest of our company, we help senior professionals to reposition their executive experience so that it signals governance readiness to boards. Because executive experience alone is not going to get you appointed. You need to signal to boards that you are ready to be a board member. Now, many professionals assume that board roles are simply the next step in a successful career. They've now had a career, they started at the bottom, worked their way up, have several degrees, done their masters, the MBA, some PhDs, and being CEO or part of the C-suite of a major corporate for a few years. So they assume that board roles are the natural next step because now they are experienced. Many of our clients get to the point where they start thinking of retirement, but then they don't want to completely retire. They want to do something. So they retire from the corporate world, but now they want to take on board roles. And they think that, okay, I'm ready. I can take on a board role now. And on paper, they are ready. If you think about how much experience they have, they are actually ready. But in reality, they require a different way of thinking. The reality is that it's not a continuation, it's a transition. People assume that once you've got to a certain level in your career, that it's easy to make that transition or to make that continuation because they think it is like climbing a ladder and the next step of the ladder is onto a board role. And actually it isn't. You need to transition into boards. It is not a continuation. It's not the natural next step. And if you can't make that transition, that is where you are going to get stuck. And that is why you need to start thinking about gaining a board role in a different way. Now, it's a course shift that needs to happen because executives run organizations, but boards safeguard them. Boards are not operational, they are strategic. And that difference changes everything about how candidates are evaluated. They are not evaluated as operators. Candidates are evaluated as strategists. And why does this matter? This matters because the challenge is not capability. the challenge lies in positioning. I know I slow down there because I want you to take that on board. I want you to really realize that the challenge is not a lack of professional experience. It is that you are being assessed through a completely different lens. So that is why it's not about capability and about your capability as a professional. It is all about how you are positioned for a board role. Now, boards are not evaluating. Just get to the next slide. Boards are not evaluating everything that you've done. And this governance positioning triangle is something that I use in many areas. And specifically when I work with clients in a program, because it's part of what our business is built on. And this governance positioning triangle shows that boards evaluate you on 3 different things, and they look at 3 specific signals. And these signals are your credibility, judgment, and independence. Now, what does that actually mean? Your credibility is what expertise do you bring? So what relevant expertise will you bring to a specific board? What expertise do you have you gained through your career? And not just through your career, through your life, because oftentimes it's not the experience that we bring with the skills that we've gained in our career. Oftentimes it's a lived experience that they are looking for in a specific area. So that relevant experience is what boards are looking for. But it's not only that. They also look for judgment. And with judgment, they want to know, how do you think at the strategic and an oversight level? Do you have the ability to think strategically? And that's where that shift comes from operator to governor. And that is why judgment is being looked at through the lens of you being able to think as a governor and not simply an operator. And then independence. Do you have the ability to challenge? Can you contribute just objectively? Are you able to look at the full picture from the outside and contribute objectively and not just agree with everything that the rest of the board says? You need to be able to challenge constructively. And there I always ask my clients, and specifically my coaching clients, are you scared to ask the difficult questions? Because oftentimes a board will be dealing with a few things in a company, and then there's this elephant in the room. And everybody is walking around the elephant, but nobody's addressing the fact that there's an elephant in this room. You don't want an elephant in any room. So they don't address that. And are you the one board member who is brave enough to actually stand up and say, guys, there's an elephant in this room. We need to address this. And to start asking those hard questions. I've been writing recently about the types of questions that need to be asked of boards and that need to be asked within the boardroom, because it's not just the questions you ask, it's the quality of the question that you ask. Because if the board keeps asking the wrong questions of one another, then the actual problem, that elephant, is not getting addressed. So are you asking the right questions? And in most cases, when I see clients get themselves ready to take on a board role, by the time they cross my path, they've usually tried. They've submitted a few board applications. They've really tried to get themselves onto a board. But what I see, the mistake that most of them make is that they rely really heavily on the credibility part, which is the experience that you have. And they forget that the board is actually looking at them through a different lens. That as much as the experience is part of that, what they need to bring to a board, they also need to bring that judgment and that independence. And in my view, independence might even be the most important part. But that's just my view. It's not for everyone. If you can have all three, and if you have a way of showing all three to the board that you are applying to, if you can show all three to this chairperson or the nominations committee, whomever is working with your application, if you can show all three to them, then that is when you get that appointment. Now, what I'm about to share is something that I see consistently, even amongst very accomplished professionals, because some people who come across my path and Janice's path are so qualified, and some of them are highly professional. Some of them are world figures that one would think boards would jump at the chance of getting them appointed to their boards. But that is not how it happens. In actual fact, they need to be making that shift. Now, even among the very highly qualified and among the high-profile professionals, I still see this problem, and that even the strongest candidates are often overlooked. So, and it's not a case of your ability to serve. It's a case of your ability to show them that you are able to serve. Now, there are three mistakes that people make when they start applying for board roles. And the one mistake comes down to credibility. They describe the experience that they have, but they don't describe the contribution. And that is such a slight difference. But when it comes to a board appointment, when it comes to a board application, that is probably the most important part of your board application. So you must not just describe what you've done. You need to describe what you can bring. And at the moment, it might sound to you, but what's the difference there? And unfortunately, it's something that takes a while to actually explain. But just start thinking about it in a different way. So what have you done? But what you've done causes you and enables you to bring something to the table. And that's how you need to describe it, is not, okay, I've done this and this and this, because that is operator language. That is when the board sees you as an operator and not as a strategist. They need to see you as a strategist and a governor. And it's only when you are able to tell them what you can bring that they start seeing you as a governor. Then the second mistake that people make is they focus only on their achievements. And boards are actually listening for judgment. They want to hear that you are able to bring judgment to the table and that you are able to listen in a way that contributes to the board. So not only asking the right questions, but also listening to your fellow board members and being able to judge what is the right path to go down. Because as I said in the beginning, your executive, your C-suite, they are the guys that run the business. They are the guys who are operational. But the board protects this business. The board safeguards this business. And without the right judgment, the right level of judgment, without being able to assess the questions that are being asked and yourself being able to ask the right questions, you are going to be seen as an operator and not a governor. Because if you do not have that ability, you are not going to be able to govern this board or this company, and you're not going to be able to contribute to the board in a way that enables the board to govern and to safeguard this company. Now, we are looking at independence, and independence falls with board readiness. I see clients don't signal that they understand the role of governance. And if you can't signal that, and when I say signal that, I mean from your documents to the way in which you interact online, the way in which you interact person to person when you are in meetings, when you even something as simple as meeting someone who can open the door to a board for you. If you meet them for coffee, you need to be able to, in some way through that discussion, signal your board readiness and signal that you understand what governance is as opposed to operations. Because understanding operations is what executive do. That is what the executive team does. You are not an executive, you're not an operator when you start moving onto the board space. Once you start moving into the board space, you need to be able to switch those hats and move from being an operator to being a governor, being the person who can work with the board to safeguard this company. Now, most candidates present as operators. Boards appoint governors, and oftentimes that is the gap. If you only take away one thing from today's session, you need to identify that gap, because there's that gap between being qualified and being selected. Because you might be highly qualified to serve on a board, but you don't get selected. And the reason for that is that there's that gap between working as an operator and being able to be seen as a governor, because boards appoint governors, not operators. Now, what do you bring into the boardroom? And this is another thing that I often share during coaching sessions or during training. And this is our board contribution map. It's actually in the training, it's a full exercise. And those of you who might be online today, I recognized one or two names of people who have actually done our course before. And I can see that, when they do this exercise, because we don't even do it during the session, it's part of what they need to do at home, because it is so broad. But the boards are not asking what you've done. They are asking, what will you bring into the boardroom? And you need to go and sit with this exercise. Go through it step by step and see what it is in these 4 quadrants, because these are the 4 quadrants that the board committees, nominations committees, the chairperson, whoever is responsible for getting people onto boards, for appointing the people onto these boards. These are the 4 areas that they actually test. This is what they look for. And the first one is strategic insight. Do you have insight into the sector? Do you have insight into the specific business? Do you have insight into the competition, into the issues of the sector or the specific company? And even if you can't demonstrate insight into that specific company, you need to be able to take what you've gained as an executive, what you've built through your career, and show the strategic insight that you've gained through that experience. So it doesn't end with, this is my experience, so this is what I bring. It only starts there. You show your experience, but you need to show it in a different way. You need to show it under a lens of strategic insight and not just operations. What have you done there? Then the next one is governance awareness. As I've said before, you need to show that you are aware of what governance actually is, because governance differs vastly from operations. There are boards here and there, especially among your not-for-profit boards, that will want their board members to become operational. But it was at the end of last year, I was sitting in an interview, and we were doing the recruitment for a specific company. And the CEO of this company was in the interview with me, and the chairperson of the board as well. But at the end of the interview, when this person went offline, because it was for international boards, so the meeting was online, and at the end of the meeting, when the candidate went offline, the first thing that the CEO said to me was, he sounds like he wants to take my job. And it's true, because as qualified as this person was, as good a board member, in my personal opinion, I think he would have been able to be. He sounded operational. He was just talking operations. And I could see that he firmly believed that that is the way to convince them to appoint him. But immediately the CEO said, he sounds like he wants to take my job, which is not true. Obviously, he wanted the board role, but it was a way for the CEO to emphasize that this person has no insight into the governance part of the business. It has no insight into, or he had no insight into what the board's function within this company actually is. So you need to be able, and this starts with your documents, and it will end, or not even end, but you will reach to and aim to get to that point where you are invited to an interview. And when you are invited to an interview, there you need to show that you know what governance is, that you absolutely understand, and that you've got a governance awareness and not only an operational awareness. The next thing is leadership perspective. Do you look at leadership and look at it through the lens of being on a board, not serving as a C-suite leader, but actually now serving as a board leader? And in most cases, that will be a non-executive. Now, I know there's executive and non-executive board members. Just a quick touch on that for those who do not quite get the difference. Your executive board members are usually made up of your C-suite. Those are people who work within the company. So that's their day job. And as part of their day job, they come and they serve on the board. But your non-executive board members, and that is the one that most of our clients want to be. They don't want to have a 9 to 5 within the company. They want to come quarterly, monthly, however this company's board is set up, which is in most cases for corporates, it will be quarterly board meetings. They want to come for those board meetings. Other than that, they want to just safeguard this company. They do not want to get involved in the operations. Now, you need to signal that. You need to show that you understand that as much as you bring skills and executive skills to the board, that the leadership shift that you need to make, that you get that you understand that you're going to be working and leading as a governor and not an operator. And then the last thing is, do you understand stakeholders? Do you have an understanding of who the stakeholders within this organization is? Who is being affected by the decisions that the board makes, whether it is staff, whether it is the operational leadership within the company, whether it is the clients that are being served or the community that's being served. But do you have insight into the stakeholders of this company? And if you can take this board contribution map and apply your own skills, apply your own governance insight, your own leadership perspective, your own insight into stakeholders. If you can put all of that together and find a way to verbalize that, find a way to get that message across to the person who is looking at your application, to the person who is interviewing you, you dramatically increase the odds of you being appointed to a board. Now, why this is difficult? The difficulty lies in the fact that most professionals already have the experience. Most people, I've had a couple of school leavers who actually contacted me and thought they can serve on a board. And in fact, there is now a board role available where they want someone under 34. So it happens. There are board roles available for really young people. But in most cases, I would say more than 99% of board roles, they want a certain level of experience. So they want you to be an experienced professional. But the challenge is that because you're not applying for a C-suite role or a managerial role within the company, you are applying for a board role. The challenge is that you need to be able to translate it into a form that boards can recognize. You need to be able to translate that professional experience that you bring, that credibility that you bring to the board, to translate that into a form that the board can see that, okay, you have credibility, but you also have judgment, and you can bring that insight to the board. Now, becoming board ready is not about better documents. I have so many clients, and it is actually slightly frustrating to the point where I am talking about completely removing this service from our company and removing it as a standalone service, because people contact us and they ask for documents. They think that because I've written, and I honestly have, I can show you the list of names. I've written over 1,000 board CVs in my lifetime. And I mean, I've been doing this since 2013. It's what's going on. Well, it's a little over 13 years now, in 2026. Wow. And in these 13 plus years, I've written over 1,000 board CVs. I should actually count how many it is by now, because I'm still writing board CVs. And I think because I've got so much experience in writing board CVs that I can get them the CV that they need to apply with. And I can do that. I can create a CV that will get you noticed. But it's not only that CV that counts. You need to understand what surrounds that CV. You need to understand that companies do not only look at the CV, they look at you as a whole, and they look at these three things that you need to get appointed to a board. And being appointed is not about better documents. It's about clarity, positioning, and visibility. Now, board readiness First of all, you need to interpret your experience, but you need to interpret it in such a way that it shows your contribution, but it needs to show the thinking behind that contribution. Now, to position for boards, you need to show an understanding of what this board does. You need to show an understanding of the fact that it is strategic, that it is not operational, that the board does not get involved in the operations. It leads, it advises, and it instructs, but it does not operate. It does not get involved in the operations. That is the work of your C-suite and your management. The board are the ones to set out the map for this company and to protect this company, to safeguard it. And the other thing that signals board readiness is entering the board ecosystem. First of all, do you understand the board ecosystem? But then also, do you understand how to enter it? Do you understand how to become a part of that board ecosystem? Because signaling your understanding of the ecosystem and also becoming a part of that ecosystem happens way before your first board appointment. It is not a case of, well, but to be board ready, I need to be appointed first, and then I can enter the ecosystem. There are ways in which you enter that ecosystem before that first appointment. And that is what you need to understand. If you can have that contribution and show that contribution, if you get your positioning right, so that boards can see that you understand what boards do, that you understand governance. And if you can start entering that ecosystem before you even start applying, if you can do all of that, if you've got all of that together, that is the way in which you signal board readiness. And that's the way in which you are going to get appointed. Now, this is where most professionals get stuck. It's absolutely 100%. If I have to gauge every client that I've ever worked with, where they get stuck is at exactly that point of showing their board readiness. And it's not because of a lack of experience. Most of my clients are in the C-suite, although we do have many that are not even in the C-suite yet, but they bring experience. They bring 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of experience that they can add to boards. But that's not what the boards are looking for. But they struggle to get appointed because they don't know how to bring all of this together. They don't know how to bring the credibility, the positioning, the understanding of the ecosystem, how to bring all of that together. And if you can do that, if you can manage to bring that together and show that you get it, that is when you get appointed. Now, what I've shared today is the thinking behind board readiness. If you think about everything that I've shared, is you need to know what lies behind being board ready. And this is what we do in our 6-week program, but we take it further than that. We don't just look at the thinking behind board readiness. What we do in our program is to apply what I've talked about through this whole session. We apply that in a structured way. And that is why this program takes 6 weeks. It is not something that you can just do in a day. People have asked me, but why can't you just do a one-day session? It's possible, but you're going to only see the tip of that iceberg if you take a one-day session. To do it over 6 weeks, we actually go in a structured way. We go through every step to get you prepared so that you can get a board appointment once that is done, once those 6 weeks are over. So over the 6 weeks, we set out a clear pathway for you to help you get on to a board. So first of all, you understand how boards think. So you understand board expectations, and you understand how to define your board contribution and your governance contribution. It's exercises that you do over the 6 weeks that actually get you there to that point where you don't only understand it, but that you are able to define what your personal governance contribution can be. Then we position you clearly, or we show you how to position yourself clearly, both in your documentation, in your profile, and in your everyday communication with others. Because it's oftentimes not the document that gets you appointed. Oftentimes it is through your network. People know that around 67% of board appointments are made through their network. But if you don't know how to position yourself in such a way that your network perceives you as a possible board member, then you're going to miss your mark on that. And then you build visibility in the board ecosystem, and we show you how to build that visibility, because there are specific ways in which you can build your visibility in such a way that by the time you start applying, by the time your CV, your board CV ends up on the recruiter's desk, or you are invited to an interview, they already know you. They already know, they are aware of you, and they know that you could be a possible board member for them. And then it's up to you to just take it across the line. And during this course, during this program, towards the end, you already start to engage with the board ecosystem in a meaningful way. So even before you have your first board role, you then know how to engage with this ecosystem so that you can communicate with them, and so that you can engage in a way that shows that you've got the ability to govern, that you're not just an operator. Now, this program is designed for senior professionals who are serious about pursuing board roles. Not immediately, but intentionally. Because sometimes people come to me and they say, I want a board role like yesterday. And it's not about the immediacy. It's about how intentional you are. Because you need to engage in this. You need to take this, first of all, take it seriously. But you need to start stepping up. And you need to start doing this in an intentional way. If you are not intentional about how you go about getting on board and how you show that you interact with the board ecosystem, it's going to fall flat. You need to be intentional about it. It's not something that just comes flying at you and you swat flies as they come up. You have a plan to get onto boards and to start engaging with this ecosystem. And that is what I show you during our interactions. Because the reality is that your experience alone is not what leads to board appointments. It's your positioning and your visibility that's going to get you a board appointment. We limit the number of participants per session because, or per cohort, because first of all, I want people to be able to interact with one another. It's not just me with a full class of people and I'm teaching. It's not that. This is an incredibly interactive program where I do teach, I do show, and you know exactly the steps that you need to take. but you also interact with the other participants. And I've been doing this program for about 3 years now, and I see participants from previous courses that are still connected with one another. I've had cases where they have helped each other get onto a board, where one got a board appointment, and then because they got to know each other during the program so well, because it runs for 6 weeks and we work really hard. It's almost like the army, where those people in the army get so connected with one another because they go through suffering together. They need to do the hard work together. And it's the same in this program. You suffer together, you do the hard work together. So you get to know each other rather well. And I see on a regular basis how previous participants are now helping each other to get onto boards because they know each other. And we have sessions on a Thursday from 10:30 to noon. And okay, I say noon, but usually it runs over slightly because people have questions, they want to talk to each other a bit. But the official session is from 10:30 to noon, and that is South African time. So it is GMT +2 if you're in another country. I am considering doing other times as well, but this next cohort will be running from 10:30 in the morning. And the hard work does not happen in the session. As much as the session is hard work, and I am exhausted after these sessions. My clients, the participants in these sessions tell me afterwards they are exhausted. But the really hard work, the practical work, happens in the week between the sessions. So over 6 weeks, you are going to be working really hard. But after those 6 weeks, you're going to know exactly how to signal to a board that you are who they are looking for. Because it is not about whether you are experienced enough. It is whether you are positioned in a way boards recognize. And if this is something that you would like to approach more deliberately, then you are welcome to join the next intake.
So how do you access the board ecosystem before you are appointed onto a board?
Interesting question. There are different ways to enter that ecosystem. And this is during that program, it's actually a full session that we just work on that, just on different ways for you to get into the ecosystem. But in short, if I have to give you the short answer, is to start engaging, start building your network, but build your network deliberately. So you start looking at who are the people within the board ecosystem, who are the people who are currently the ones who pull the levers on boards, and build relationships with those people. Now, it's difficult in just a session like this to talk about the full scope of how you build those relationships, but some people just get it and they can do it themselves. But there are many things that you can do. For instance, start inviting the right people on LinkedIn. LinkedIn to me is one of the best tools that you can use to get yourself onto a board and to start making yourself visible within that ecosystem. But once again, you need to use LinkedIn in the right way. And there are a few things that you can do to enhance your chances of getting appointed in that way. If you know of in-person meetings, if you know about networking events where you know that specific board members will be at the event, then go there, introduce yourself, start getting the message across. And in that way, you start to move more and more into that ecosystem so that you become a recognized entity, so that you become a known entity to them. When they start appointing people, that they will recognize your name, or in some cases, that you can even be front of mind for them, so that they will appoint you simply because they know who you are. And obviously, then they will have a general idea, at least, of your capability of working as a governor. Are there any other questions? Linda, I hope I answered your question.
And then Martina wants to know what is the difference between our program and the one offered by the IODSA?
Okay, the IODSA's program teaches you what to do once you're in the boardroom. So they teach you governance. They teach you King 5. They teach, I know the certified directors course, and I have clients who've done the certified chair course of the IODSA as well, and the AICD, the GCI, the IOD in the UK, IOD India. All of them, the courses are very similar. So just if you do a course like this, just be forewarned, please do it with a recognized organization such as the AICD or the IODSA or the IOD, and not just some place that jumps up. But those courses teach you how to be a board member, but they don't teach you how to get onto a board. And that is where we come in. This program, and it's not a course, it's absolutely a program because you work hard in it. It's not as much as you'll get a certificate of completion at the end. It's the actual work because it's practical. It shows you how to get to that point where the boardroom door opens for you. The IODSA shows you what to do once you are inside that boardroom. That is what they teach. And they are really good at it. That's why I don't even try to tread on that ground. But the gap lies in what you can bring to a board and then actually translating that to something that boards understand so that that door opens for you. I would say at least half of our clients already have a certified director's qualification. They've done the course, some of them a few years ago already. But they come to me and they say, I've done this course, I've paid so much, and I have no idea how to get onto a board. I've put in application after application. I receive those newsletters. I apply for every application that comes up, every position that comes up, and I simply cannot get appointed. And it's because they don't understand this gap. They don't understand how to bridge the gap. And that is what we do in our program. Any other questions?
What is the price of the program, and is it possible to consider after-hour sessions or weekend sessions?
This specific program, you will have to go onto the link to check the pricing because there are different payments that you can make, and it depends on the payment structure that you choose, what the pricing is. But this specific program, the next one that starts on the 7th of May, is going to be during the day. As I said, I am considering doing programs that differ in timing, so it will still run over 6 weeks, but I'm looking at maybe a Friday evening program or a program that will run on a Saturday. It depends on the demand, because it's difficult to do the program just for one person. Then I would rather say take on some coaching sessions with me, and we can work through this. But the value in the program actually lies in the interaction that you get from the other people attending the program. So if there is enough interest in a weekend program, or enough interest in a late afternoon or maybe even early morning program, especially for our international clients, then I will do it. Then we'll set up a program. But once again, it's better to have at least a group of people so that you do get that interaction, because then you get the full value of the program and not just me showing you what to do. You start building your network. You actually, to a certain degree, start entering that ecosystem during the program. And that is why the group work is so valuable to absolutely everybody who attend this program. So answer is yes, but the next program, unfortunately, they are already registrants. The people have started registering like 2-3 weeks ago, and we haven't advertised it yet, but people who knew about it contacted Jenny and started registering. So we unfortunately cannot change that because they are already registered. So that program is set, I can say set in stone. But I will consider other times for other cohorts. So if you are interested in the program, but you cannot make those times, then let me know. And we can then see what the interest is. And I will let you know once more people become available, so that you can get the full value of the program. If you can't get in touch with me, best person to get in touch with is Shani. She's the one she runs the business. I just do my thing, but she runs the business. She runs my program. She runs everything, participants in the course and all of that. So get in touch with Shani. That will be the easiest way. Shani, you can maybe drop your email address there if you want, and let her know that you are interested in the course, where in the world you are, what time will suit you best, what time slots you could participate in. And then we can get back to you once we see that there is a group of people, that we've got a group of people together that will be able to participate with you. Anything else before we are done? I see we are past noon already.
The next question is, how does this apply to global board appointments? And does one need to differentiate position?
I couldn't hear your question after the global board appointments.
Does one need to differentiate positioning?
Okay, I can't quite get it. Sorry, my sound is terrible. This does apply to global board appointments. On our program, we've actually had numerous international board members, and I currently have two in the US and one in Canada who are looking to start the program, but it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning there at the moment. So for them, I will have another time slot. But it does apply. Everything that I said today applies internationally. There isn't a country in the world where this does not apply, because boards look at people in a certain way. Now, certain countries have some almost like a register. I know that of a few European and Nordic countries specifically, where if you want to become a board member there, you have to register. And then once you've registered and your name is on that register, only then do you start applying. So having your name on the register doesn't mean you're going to get the board appointment. It still takes all of this work, but it's just a legal formality that they want, that, okay, these are the people who are available for board service. But boards, in my experience, do not contact that register or the governments who run those registers and say, okay, give us 10 board members. They don't do that. Once you apply, they actually go and check, are you registered? And then they appoint you. But you still need to be able to show all of these things that I've been talking about. You need to position yourself as a credible board director, and you need to be able to be seen through that lens. And it's only then that you will get that appointment. I hope I've answered the question, Janie, because I didn't quite get the second part of the question there.
Yes, you did. Are you ready for the next one?
Yes, you're throwing me with a lot today.
If one is interested in international board positions where English is not the main language, example China, how likely are boards to appoint English speakers?
In my experience, we actually have clients in China, and they are likely to appoint you. There is a possibility that they will appoint you, but it depends on what the board is looking for. So you can, if you are English speaking, most countries will be willing to look at you as a board member. The difficulty in getting international roles, for instance, if you're in South Africa and you want a role in China, you need to have something that you can bring those boards that someone who's local there can't bring. And that is usually the stumbling block. That is usually the part that people need to show that they don't. They think that the only barrier is language, where in actual fact, so many companies in, I would say, across Asia, Singapore, for instance, but also China and I would say South Korea. I'm thinking of a number of countries now, Japan. They do not speak English as a general language, although in Singapore they now do. But China, Korea, Japan, those don't really speak English as their mother tongue. But because they are operating globally now, more and more boards are starting to realize that having global operations and having global insight, because what happens in one country does affect businesses in another. Just have a look at what's happening at the moment with Iran and how it's affecting businesses across the globe, and not just businesses, people. And for that reason, those countries are starting to look more and more at the international board members. So you need to, if you can learn Mandarin, for instance, if you really want to serve on a board in China, if you can learn Mandarin or one of the dialects that is generally used, I see Mandarin as something that is sometimes asked for. It will be just that extra. It will be that extra plus for you if you can learn that language, at least at a basic level where you can participate in discussions. But having English and being able to speak English, perfect. You can usually, if the board is specifically looking for someone from outside the country, then you will get that appointment. But it's a case, once again, you need to be able to show your credibility. You need to be able to show your judgment. You need to be able to show that you are the person they are looking for. And if you can do that, you are in. But getting international board roles are more difficult than getting roles locally. So whichever country you are in will be the first place you need to start looking. But if your profile suits international roles, 100%. We've had numerous clients who have been appointed to international roles. We've had international clients being appointed to boards in Africa. So it goes both ways. But being able to speak English is already takes you quite the distance into getting that appointment. Are there any more questions?
The last one I've got here is the program recognized by any of the CETAs in South Africa, and what is the NQF level?
Yeah, we have been contacted by a number of them to ask if we don't want to register with them, because they will actually recognize it as, I think it was NQF 9, that one said. At the moment, we are not registered for the simple reason I got some legal advice and I was told to rather not register, because for various reasons. The quality of the program speaks for itself. And we have numerous previous clients and previous attendees of the program who said they are more than willing for us to give their names, and they are willing to talk about the program and what they've been able to get after the program. I received a WhatsApp message last night from a client who did our program 2 years ago, just on 2 years now. And he just, when he started the program, he was in middle management in a government organization, and he would have been one of the more difficult people to get appointed because he did not have specific board experience, and he is very niche orientated. He works in a specific sector, in a specific niche within that sector. But he contacted me last night, and he's now got his 5th board appointment. We are now talking about him moving over to leave his day job, to just build a portfolio career, because he's got so many board appointments now, and these are extremely high-profile board appointments. It's not just a not-for-profit or something like that. He serves on really high-profile boards, and we have many stories like those. He just comes to mind because he contacted me last night, because he, just within this past week, he's been appointed to 2 new boards now. So that will make his 5th one. He's had 6, or it would have been 6, but one of them he decided by the time contracts came up, and he did some research and he decided not to take that one. So he was actually offered 6 board positions, but he's got 5. So we are not currently registered with the CETA, and we have specific reasons for that. But if that is something that someone is looking for, then we are not there. But it's not to say we won't do it in the future. As for now, we have this program that the work of the program enables you to get onto boards, and that is what it is about. It's not about another tick on your CV. Although you can add it to the professional development part of your CV, because it develops something that is part of professional development. But as far as CETAs and those things are concerned, no, we're not registered there. Anything else?
That's all.
Have I covered everything? Okay.
Yeah.